couples that kiss more, and this is kissing for at least 9 seconds with a bit of saliva exchange,
9 seconds.
seem to have more similar microbiomes. There's around 80 million bacteria transferred. Some of these might not be great, but actually a lot of the bacteria we have, that can actually be really healthy for us. And so we're sharing that load through kissing.
I would imagine that's quite hard to unhear. Like the next time you're kissing someone, you're going 8, 9, oh, there we go, hit my 80 million.
I want to begin with what a kiss is and the different types of kiss. Xand and I came up with 5.
Okay. Well, I mean, our definition was extremely clunky and it wasn't very sexy at all. So it was directed, intraspecific, mouth-to-mouth contact that couldn't be agonistic and didn't involve food transfer. So it's maybe not the type of kiss that you're thinking about.
Directed means it's not just, you haven't bumped faces.
Exactly.
It's purposeful.
Exactly.
What's intraspecific?
Intraspecific just means that it has to be within the same species.
What did you say? It's not agonistic?
Non-agonistic. That just means that it's not aggressive. So we see something that looks a lot like kissing in French gruntfish and some other species of fish where they basically will swim up to each other, they will open their mouths really wide and they'll lock lips and they'll stay very still. And what they're trying to do is kind of assert their dominance. It's a territorial display and it's aggressive. So that is not really what we think about when we talk about kissing, but actually it looks exactly like kissing.
Okay.
Now, the other interesting thing here is this lack of food transfer. When mothers, for example, might pre-chew food for their offspring, if it's a bit difficult to digest, that is called pre-mastication. Now, lots of animals will do this. This happens across the animal kingdom. And again, that mouth-to-mouth transfer of food looks a lot like kissing. It's got the movement of the lips. It's directed. It's lip-to-lip contact.
Non-agonistic.
But that is not what we would think of.
We're not interested in that.
As kissing. So that's kind of why we got to this extremely clunky and unsexy definition of kissing.
Why were you trying to figure out how to define a kiss?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked me this. So we ran a comparative study, and that means that we ran this across lots of different species of animal. We weren't trying to define what a human kiss looks like, because that doesn't necessarily tell us anything about what polar bear kisses might look like, or kisses in ants or albatrosses. So we needed this really broad definition that encompassed lots of different animals. So, for example, humans, we have quite flat faces. We have movable lips. That's quite important in how humans kiss. But polar bears have muzzles. They've got really big teeth. They have extremely long tongues. And so this is all needs to be encompassed in that definition when we're trying to look across different animals.
Right, let alone if you've got a beak or a mandible.
Exactly. So actually we said the lips and or mouth parts as well in our definition. We were trying to be really, really broad in our, I guess, the way we encompassed kissing.
And the reason you developed this definition is because you're studying this phenomenon that we see between human beings in other species.
Exactly.
When we think about human kissing, why do humans kiss and are there different types?
Humans probably kiss for a lot of the same reasons that other animals kiss, actually. I don't think there is this kind of special human type of kiss. Maybe it looks a bit different to the way that other animals kiss, but the potential motivations for doing that, or at least the kind of the evolutionary function of kissing, is probably very similar. So actually it's really important as well to define these two different types of kiss. So you have the romantic or sexual kiss, and then you have more platonic kissing. So the sort of kiss you might see between a parent and their offspring or between friends. So there are various reasons why we might kind of perform each of these types of kiss. So in terms of romantic or sexual kissing, the two leading hypotheses are that it's something to do with mate assessment, or it could be a sort of pre-copulatory, so before sex, arousal. So kind of like a form of foreplay. So this mate assessment idea, I think, is really interesting. That could be basically a way of checking the quality of your mate. So try before you buy. And that could be things like a health check. So if someone is a bit unwell, you can often actually smell that on their breath. And so maybe you kind of don't want to go the whole hog and then copulate with that individual. Bear in mind, I'm talking about other animals here as well as humans. You could also be testing for things like whether you have a similar major histocompatibility complex, which actually is this kind of immune function. You want your immune system to be slightly different to those that you're potentially mating with, because then your offspring might have greater immune function themselves.
Are you saying that it would give me almost a subconscious awareness of their overall health status?
Potentially. So I think the things that we're consciously thinking about when we kiss someone are, is this enjoyable? But that doesn't necessarily speak to the evolutionary function. So you have this kind of conscious level of what we're doing, and then you've got the evolutionary function of why that occurs, and they're slightly different things.
But when you have the experience sometimes of kissing someone and going, yeah, I don't think I really want to do that again. And that may be that you've got information that is subconscious, that is about immune compatibility or all kinds of other things, or something about their health status that isn't just bad breath. That is what you've evolved to use kissing as an information gathering exercise.
Exactly.
And you may not be able to dissect it all. Keep going on the whys of kissing, Matilda.
So the other potential reason that we could have this, I guess, sexual or romantic kiss is that it could be a form of pre-copulatory arousal. Now, that just means that the individuals are becoming sexually aroused before sex. And that can be helpful for a variety of reasons. At least in humans, female arousal can potentially increase the chances of fertilization during sex. This hasn't been tested, but this is a potential hypothesis for why kissing might be important.
Any other functions?
I mean, in terms of this, I guess, mate assessment hypothesis, we could actually be sharing our oral microbiota with our partners. So there was a really cool study that found that on average, partners who cohabit have more similar oral microbiota, mainly on the tongue, actually. And so couples that kiss more, and this is kissing for at least 9 seconds with a bit of saliva exchange rather than a kind of peck,
9 seconds.
seem to have more similar microbiomes. That can also increase your immune function. When people kiss for over 9 seconds, there's around 80 million bacteria transferred. Now, of course, some of these might not be great, but actually a lot of the bacteria we have in our mouths, that can actually be really healthy for us. And so we're sharing that load through kissing.
So there is a model of kissing where one of its functions is it's a sort of probiotic. When you kiss someone, you're getting a whole load of bacteria from them, and that may have benefits in the same way that eating live yogurt does. Exactly. I like that idea.
Yeah, and actually that's what they did in the study to test this exchange. They got couples to share a long, they call it an intimate kiss. I think they just mean they use tongues. And then one of the partners drank a probiotic yogurt. Then they got the couples to kiss again, and then they tested the exchange of bacteria, and that's how they got to this 80 million number.
Which is a very disgusting thought in some circumstances, but if you reframe it as romantic probiotics, that could be nice.
Once you've heard that 80 million number, I would imagine that's quite hard to unhear. Like the next time you're kissing someone, you're kind of going, well, you know, as you're sort of 8, 9, you're like, oh, there we go, 80 million, hit my 80 million.
Let's talk then about what happens when people are actually kissing and how you study that.
So I think one of the things that we think might be happening when we kiss, although again it's not super well studied, is this release of oxytocin, which is bonding hormone, or that's one of its functions, is for bonding. So this is particularly relevant for example, parent offspring, or even these kind of maybe more romantic kisses in a longer term relationship.
Okay, so do we know what happens to kissing as you go from this mate assessment bit to, okay, you've now had an offspring with that partner, and then
Why do you
what
still
happens?
kiss?
Well, and indeed, do you still kiss?
So there was a really interesting study where they got people to do a 6-week trial of increased kissing. And they found that those in the kind of the extra kissing group had a significantly lowered feeling of stress. They had greater relationship satisfaction, and actually their cholesterol was reduced as well. Now, that's not necessarily kissing reduces your cholesterol. That could be due to the lowered stress response. But it does seem to have this kind of health benefit to people who kiss more in relationships.
See, this is Chris and I were arguing about this before you arrived. Chris is saying essentially it's like drinking water. You just drink to thirst. Like if you want to kiss someone, that's fine. Go ahead if they want to kiss you. But you don't have to deliberately incorporate it into your wellness regime. And I was, but I
Your wellness protocol.
Well, I phoned my wife on the way here, and she said we recently had a baby, so we've been sleeping in separate rooms, and I've been ill, and blah blah. Anyway, we just haven't done a lot of kissing for a few weeks. She said we should do more kissing, and I was like, we absolutely should. From what Matilda's saying, it sounds like maybe that would actually be a good thing to do, just to go have it front of mind, do more kissing, remove the barriers at least.
I think so. And I think there was a note in this study that was really interesting where they said that at first, these couples that were told to kiss more had to really think about that. And they were sending them these reminder emails, you know, keep on kissing, keep on kissing. And eventually that just got incorporated into their relationships, and they were doing it without really thinking about it. They were kissing more.
I think of kissing as quite a risky thing. Is that true?
I think it can be in certain circumstances. So we know it's a really great way to spread viral infections. So, you know, if someone's got the flu, you're probably not going to be kissing them. But it can also spread things like HPV and herpes, which can be potentially even more severe. So it's a trust exercise as well.
Okay, I love that. Tell us about platonic kissing. Is that part of the same spectrum of behaviour, or is that much closer to like a handshake or just a general physical greeting, a hug?
Yeah, I think we have all sorts of physical greetings, and I guess that's one reason we might kiss is as a greeting, but actually just affiliative touch, friendly touch in general is really important. Humans, like other primates, are a highly, highly social species. And so one of the other hypotheses for why we kiss in a more platonic or friendly context is actually that we're kind of smoothing social relationships. We're mitigating any potential tension. So chimpanzees, for example, will kiss quite often in this platonic context, and they will kiss and make up after they've had an argument. That's one of the ways that they reconcile with one another. And humans will do this as well. So it's really useful basically for smoothing out any social tensions and maintaining social bonds as well.
Just in terms of that distinction between romantic and platonic kisses, you've got the sort of greeting a colleague with an air kiss. But kissing your child, particularly if they're upset or injured or worried, is a very different thing to greeting somebody.
Yeah.
It seems much more physiological, instinctive. How does that fit into that balance between romantic kisses and platonic kisses?
Yeah, and actually you're probably in much closer physical proximity to your child if you're kissing them. There's not this kind of socially enforced distance where you kiss someone on the cheek and we know that's what we do, but you don't really linger there. And that seems, again, it's a really important bonding mechanism. We think it's to do with bringing you closer and maintaining that really important bond.
You're just making me realise I feel I can wall away romantic kissing as a very different physical experience.
Yes.
So can we talk a bit about the emotions it arouses? Because one thing I've noticed, Xand and I were just talking about this, when my wife and I do romantic kissing, it is quite often to annoy our children. That from our 1-year-old, we did this the other day, and she came and stood between us and pushed us apart and went, stop. And it wasn't quite jealousy. It was the older children are absolutely physically repulsed by it.
Yeah.
I remember, and I still slightly feel when I watch kissy moments in movies, real disgust. Why are so many of us so disgusted by kissing?
It's this funny line, isn't it, between platonic kissing and then more romantic kissing. And I suppose it comes when romantic kissing is on someone's radar as a thing that can happen and can potentially lead to sex. And I think that might be part of our discomfort with seeing it. You know, if someone's really going for it on the tube or something like that, then you think, actually, this feels very private and I'm not sure I want to be kind of involved in this scene that's going on. Why do I have to look at this?
Okay, I like that.
Some people do lead a completely kissless life. Is that bad for their health and well-being?
No, not at all. I think kissing is one of a suite of behaviours that we have. We're very flexible in our general behaviours and in our sexual behaviours. So I think leading a kissless life is absolutely fine. It does seem to have this group of benefits. So we know that it can be a way of reducing stress, which can potentially lower cholesterol. It can increase relationship satisfaction, but that's not prescriptive. You don't have to be kissing. You don't have to behave in any certain way. The key here, actually, and in a lot of the work that I do, is that we have this really diverse suite of sexual behaviours as animals, as primates in particular. And these are kind of, I guess, available in a lot of different circumstances to different individuals. And some of them will be useful for some and not for others. So we know that actually not all human societies seem to have this romantic sexual kiss that we've been talking about.
Is that right?
Yeah, it does seem to be that way.
If you were really not into kissing, where would you go and look for your spouse?
I was looking at the stats so this isn't our research, this is another study, and I believe Central America doesn't seem to have this romantic or sexual kiss. Now, I am sceptical of this. I'm sceptical of a lot of studies that say, this culture does this culture doesn't do that. I think, again, we're so flexible as a species that I find it a little bit unconvincing that nobody kisses in these groups. But this study looked at around 170 different world cultures, and they found that kissing, romantic sexual kissing, only seems to occur in around 46% of those cultures.
So what is easy to think of, if certainly in our culture, as a deeply instinctive thing that you're inevitably drawn towards, actually, if you don't feel that instinct and you're not really into it, there are loads of people around the world who will back you up and go, yeah, we're not into that.
So I like your hesitation about the certainty of the research, but I also like the idea of this spectrum of human sexual behaviours. And there are many ways of existing in the world on these spectrums, and they're all equally legitimate. I really like that. This conversation has been far too fascinating. Matilda, it's been incredible. Can we ask the question that we always ask all of our experts, which is, how does your research affect your life?
So I think what I find really interesting about the work that I do is that these behaviours, like kissing, that maybe we think are just human, actually do occur across the animal kingdom. So diversity in these behaviours is the rule, not the exception. And I think that's really important to remember. As long as the things you're doing aren't harming anyone, then I think it's fine to kind of be who you want to be, do what you want to do. And I find that quite grounding from my research.
I think that's an amazing place to end on.
Matilda, thank you so much for joining us on WhatsApp Dogs.
Thank you for having me.